I'm a sick man. I'm a wicked man, an attractive man. I think my liver hurts, however I don't know a thing about my sickness. I'm not sure what it is that hurts me. This is the introduction to Dostoevsky's novel, Nursing in the Ground. And here we can see how easily we can identify things that are tangible and already have their foreseen outcomes. He knows that he is sick based off the pain he feels in his body, and he can deem himself wicked based on the way he has treated people in the past. However, for those things that aren't easily identified, he hasn't the clue for. Now, this translates really well with how we deal with emotional situations. According to Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, he believes that if a man lashes out in anger, there's a cause for this outward hatred. He called this cause as the shadow. Now, he believes that these are the characteristics of oneself that we deem as either socially unacceptable or overall things that we just don't want to show to other people. So in response to this, people tend to repress it and not show it to other people and having it linger beneath the surface of their consciousness. However, just because you hide something doesn't mean it always goes away. He believes that if a man lashes out in anger, or if a man is put under situations of high anxiety or stress, he'll lash out and say and do something he wouldn't do. But it isn't always seen as clearly as this way. He believes that even the way we treat others subconsciously is likely to be the works of the shadow. Now, before I go on and talk more in depth about this, it's important to have an understanding on what creates the self and causes decisions we make. Jung believes that we're divided into two separate categories, the unconscious and conscious parts of ourselves. And if any one of these options are too strong, it can cause disruption in ourselves. Now, regarding the conscious parts of ourselves, it contains the persona and the ego. Now, what does it look like when the ego is out of check or in disbalance? Referring back to Nursing in the Ground, we see the main character, the underground man, to believe that he is better than everybody around him. He calls himself intelligent and describes everybody else around him as vile. Now, on Tuesdays, he goes to his friend Simnov's house. And there, he drinks tea with his two daughters and occasional one or two guests. However, one week, he's feeling especially lonely. He goes off to Simnov's house. There, despite it being a Thursday. And when he arrives, he sees Simnov and two former classmates planning a farewell dinner for another classmate. Now, mind you, he hates all these people. He believes that they're below him and vile, but he still feels this need and that he deserves a spot in this dinner, despite having no real connection to be there. Now, in a way to get invited, he projects himself and says, "Oh, I'll pay for the dinner. Don't worry," as a way to get invited. And reluctantly, instead of his desperation, they invite him. The next day, he shows up to this dinner 30 minutes late, just to be the first one there, because they had pushed the entire event an hour without telling him. Now, when he arrives, everybody shows up. They end up pitying him. They look down on him because of the way he's dressed and he's presenting himself. He couldn't even find a pair of clean pants. Now, he bursts out in anger because these people that he views as below him are lashing out at him. And how can they be doing this when I'm better than them? And he causes a whole scene and ends up even challenging one of them to a duel, embarrassing himself even more. They ignore him for the rest of the dinner and end up leaving to go somewhere else with just them. Now, what did his ego achieve here? Nothing. Nothing. He ends up in a dinner that he's not welcomed at and with people that he has no reason to be in, and overall just turns into a mess. Now, regarding the persona, this is the parts of ourselves that we end up showing to other people in belief that it'll make us more likable or people will enjoy it more. Now, this can become a problem when you think of celebrities and concert idols. There are people that live their entire life off of this persona that they create and even make a living off of it. But similar to the shadow, something can only last forever. Just because you pretend something doesn't mean it becomes reality. And this is often why we see celebrities crash out and become drug addicts in order to escape from this. Now, regarding to the unconscious parts of ourselves, he believes that these are the parts that act subconsciously and aren't directly related to the things that we do. This is divided into the shadow and the nivus anima. According to Jung, the nivus anima are our characteristics within oneself that have our instinctual reactions to certain situations. Now, let's talk about the shadow, the main topic of this. I believe no film describes this better than the movie All of Us Strangers. Here we follow a queer writer who has feelings of loneliness ever since the death of his parents as a kid and having no one around him and moving into this practically abandoned apartment. Now, one day a fire alarm goes off and as routine, he goes outside. And there, he sees a man from one dimly lit window. And they make eye contact, and there's this sense of intimacy shared between them. But he doesn't think of this anymore and ends up going back inside. Now, once he arrives inside, after a little bit, he hears a knock on his door. It's the same man that he saw outside. Now, he shows up and he calls himself Harry, and it's clear that he's obviously drunk, but more important, he's lonely. He's desperate to be with another person, and this feeling is shared so strongly, and he shows signs of suicidal thoughts and something, and he just wants to spend a night with one person, no matter who it is. But in response to this, Adem ends up, despite him having a sense of interest in him, he ends up projecting his offer and closes the door on him and shuns him away. Now, Jung would argue that because he had these feelings of projection, he saw that in words himself, he is a very lonely man, and that this other guy shares these exact same feats as him. Now, this is where we get into the topic of projection. Jung would argue that because he felt these feelings, he pushed them away. Now, similarly to this story, we can look back at the story I mentioned before. The underground man describes everyone around him to be vile and horrible people. But they described him to be the exact same. Now, what am I trying to get at here? What's the entire point of this talk? I mean, am I trying to convince you all that you're all horrible people deep down inside? I mean, I even have a quote here: man is on the whole less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. No, quite the opposite. What I believe both of these people, Dostoevsky and Jung, are trying to describe is a warning for ourselves into becoming somebody that we don't necessarily want to be. So often than not, we feel that we want to, in order to fit into a situation, we need to manipulate ourselves and become this person that will fit perfectly into this keyhole. But if we have to pretend to be somebody else, often than not, it's not a situation that we necessarily belong in. Think about a time that you have tried to talk to somebody by pretending to be somebody, and although it may have worked out in the short time, overall it doesn't last forever. Now, Jung describes the shadow to be 90% or 80% pure gold. He says that it displays a number of good qualities, such as normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, and creative impulses. So if he calls this, why was everything I was saying so nihilistic and down? Well, Jung believes that we only experience these qualities of negativity and projection once we treat the shadow as an enemy. And it's only when we treat it like an ally or somebody we get along with that we can have this sense of harmony within oneself. And become a more whole person. Overall, if there's anything that I want you guys to take from this presentation, is to remember to try to just be your genuine, authentic self. Nowadays, I feel like it's so easy to fall into a persona with the introduction to social media and how everybody else seems to have it so together. So if I just pretend and fake it till I make it, one day, eventually, I will reach the same status as them. But that's just not the case. So many times we see these people that we look up to, eventually over time, crash and burn out. And it's only the people that are genuine and authentic to themselves and to all the people around them that we see prosper in the long run over tens of years. Because we shouldn't ruin our lives over a short period of time just to please a few other people. And we should remember that it's always important to take care of ourselves and pretend to be, instead of pretending for other people. Thank you.